Hello, everybody, and welcome to this, the latest in our series of podcasts brought to you by the team at Export to Japan, working in partnership with the British Embassy in Tokyo. And for this particular edition, we are going to dive into the world of the British Chamber of Commerce in Japan. There is a new man at the helm, and you can see him on camera right now. And I look forward to introducing Richard in a moment and learning much more about Richard's vision that he's going to be working on with himself and his team, and all the good work that the Chamber is doing to support UK companies in Japan. But before we dive into that, I just need to ask a favor from you. If you would so kindly please hit that subscribe button right now. This is our new season of podcasts coming from the E2J team. And this is the second one in the series, and we have a whole raft of really interesting podcasts coming up. So if you would subscribe, then you'll get a notification of all the new podcasts as they're coming online. And secondly, as we go through this podcast, if you're enjoying the content and you would be inclined to click that like button, that would really help us as well with all of our SEO, Google rankings and YouTube rankings and things like that too. So we appreciate your help and support in return. Now, without further ado, I'd like to move on and introduce today's guest, who is the new president of the British Chamber of Commerce in Japan, Richard Lyle. Richard, welcome to the podcast.
Steve, thank you. And thank you for inviting me today to talk about the great work that the Chamber does.
It's our pleasure, and thank you. I know you're a busy man, so thank you for making the time, and congratulations on your new role as president of the Chamber. I think you've sort of been working with the Chamber as part of the executive committee for a number of years now. How many years have you been involved, Richard?
Yes, so as a member for the last 14 years, but on XCOM just the last 3 years. So as I sort of, from a few years ago, got more interested in working with the Chamber and getting more involved. And then came onto the XCOM, and then next thing you know, I'm president. So very happy to be in this position. Yes.
Well done, and congratulations once again on your appointment to that role. Very exciting. So to kick off, maybe you could just tell us, for some of our listeners and viewers, this may be the first time that they've become aware of the Chamber of Commerce in Japan. So could you just tell us a little bit more about the background and the history of the Chamber, please?
Yeah, sure. So we're a non-profit organization established in 1948. We have about 1,000 members within our organization across 190 companies, and a very diverse range of sectors. About 40 industries are represented in our membership, and those range from huge multinational corporations down to small SMEs with maybe 1 or 2 people in them. So a very diverse membership within our organization. And I guess the common theme is all of our members have an interest in the UK-Japan relationship and doing business here in Japan. Of course, we welcome people from companies from all nationalities. They don't have to be exclusively British. So we have a very diverse membership.
Do you know kind of approximately, I'm sure you don't know the exact number off the top of your head, but what sort of balance have you got between, say, Japanese companies as members versus British? Is it primarily British members you have, or what sort of balance?
Yes, so I would say we are primarily, our members are primarily British, but we do have, of course, a number of Japanese companies as our in our membership. But I would say, yes, probably the majority is our British companies, but we have other nationalities as well, beyond Japanese and British, of course, as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Now, in terms of the structure of the Chamber, then you're obviously in the role. You're very much at the helm now as the president, and but in terms of the rest of the structure, how is it organized, and how does the Chamber actually work?
Yeah, so we have a secretariat who deal with the hard work of the Chamber, and that's overseen by an executive committee, which we endearingly call the XCOM. And the XCOM is made up of 15 members, and every year there's an election to elect members to the XCOM. And we have a very diverse group of people on XCOM coming from various industries and backgrounds. So it's a very lively bunch of people. And then, of course, the president is sort of elected within from the XCOM as well. And so, as you mentioned earlier, I took up the helm back in April this year. So the elections are yearly, so we tend to change. And I think each year XCOM changes a little bit, so we tend to evolve as we move forward.
Okay, sounds good. And then in very general terms, I want to dive in a little bit further in the podcast about some specifics, but in general terms, what does a typical year look like, if there is a typical year at the moment? What sort of activities do you do, and what goes on at the chamber during a year?
Yeah, sure. So our purpose obviously is to serve our membership. So key vision of the chamber is to make great connections with people that matter in business. So we're very much networking is a big part of our organization. So through that, we have a range of different activities. Of course, we have events around various themes, and those could be in-person events. And obviously with the pandemic, recently there's been online events, of course. We can also help our members with introductions and so forth to find the right people. But again, it's a lot of it focused on business. Our members are interested in developing their businesses here in Japan. So a lot of what we do focuses in on that. And I guess we're also trying to ensure that our members stay informed about what's going on between Japan and the UK, to ensure that they're up to date on the latest things. And that could be negotiations around trade agreements, free trade agreements. It could be the news, it could be recent partnerships and trends in various sectors, of course, as well, for example.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. And actually, we know through the inquiries we get through the Export to Japan platform, a lot of those questions are very hot topics. So yeah, it would be very good for people to know that by engaging with the chamber, that's a very good way to get information on a lot of those sort of topics and themes. So, and we'll come on to the, again, subsequently, I want to get onto the detail of membership and how that works and things. So we will get to that in a moment and look at that in a bit more detail. But just sort of carrying on the theme. So you're actually, I keep referring to you as the new president, but as you've just said, it was April. So you're perhaps almost halfway through the first year in the role, but you're new into the role, and we know there's been a bit of a change as well with the sort of executive team. Sarah Backley's come on board as the executive director. It's obviously been a challenging couple of years with the pandemic for everybody, and that will have had a big impact on the way you can do your activities, of course. But in terms of looking ahead, are there any particular kind of visions and thoughts at this stage that you and Sarah are having on the direction of the chamber, or areas that you plan to focus on particularly?
Yeah, sure. So of course, under the new leadership, we're very keen to ensure that there's stability, and we keep the membership at the heart of what we do. So the transition period was very important for us to make sure that we took over and kept things moving forward. And we are doing that, of course. And then I think, as the pandemic now is sort of coming to an end, we're obviously looking very closely at what we do as a chamber. Prior to the pandemic, we were looking at about sort of 45 to 50 events a year. Those were all in person, about 2,000 attendees. With the pandemic, we very quickly pivoted to online. But I think that's shown us that actually we can shake things up a bit. So I think under the new leadership, we definitely want to keep the chamber moving forward and change a little bit. But I guess I like to think of it as ordered change. I'm not looking for radical change to the chamber. I think ordered change. An ordered change, I think, means that ensuring that we meet the needs of our members. So as we look at events, I think we will look at hybrid, so there'll be a mixture of online and in person. And in person can take many different forms as well. The pandemic has shown us that we can actually get access to great speakers from all around the world, of course, and that's very important. So we will continue to do that. But now that travel is opening up again, it's very good to see that Japan is opening up even more on that front. I think we'll see more high-level visitors come to Japan, global CEOs, ministers, and so forth. So definitely we would like to use those visits to gain access to those people, to our members, to plan events and so forth. And I think another key thing to say would be, after a 2-year hiatus, the British Business Awards Gala is back in person in November. We're planning a big event at the Conrad. and it's shaping up very nicely. Tickets are sold out. Yeah, we plan to make that the talk of the town for that event. Yes, so very exciting times coming. Yeah,
fabulous. And is that early November, somewhere around
yes.
there?
So it's November the 2nd. I think that's Tuesday, and the Wednesday is a holiday. So that gives people a chance to sort of relax after
recovery time.
Exactly. But yes, we're really looking forward to getting back to what's important for us. I think the online space is very good for information exchange and so forth, but really for us in person, I think is very important. And our members, time and time again tell us that actually it's in-person stuff that they really like. So I think the BBA should be a good one.
I've been fortunate enough to attend that event a couple of times, and I have to say I can only endorse it too. It's a wonderful event, and I know it's the sort of highlight in the sort of jewel in the crown of the events for the year, and it is a great event and a great chance to meet people and network and relax and have a good time. So I'm glad to hear that that's coming back, and amazing that you've sold all the tickets already. It just shows the appetite for people to get back together. So I'm sure that event will go really, really well in November. It's great to hear it's coming back. We've talked a little bit about the sort of pandemic, and obviously that's been a little bit of a challenge over the last couple of years, but it's great to hear that you're now sort of coming out of that and some of the exciting plans that you've got for the year ahead. It might be interesting to learn a little bit more, if you could give any sort of examples or case studies or ideas of how the Chamber has really helped UK companies that may be either entering the market or looking to build their business in Japan. Are there any examples that sort of come to mind that you could share with us of activities that the Chamber's done?
Yes, of course. So as I mentioned, networking and connecting people is really important for us. So a recent success story is at an event, the Hilton Tokyo and Vega Global. Vega Global provide audiovisual solutions for companies. They met at an event. The Hilton had recently had a space at the hotel that used to be sort of taking photos for weddings. It sort of had opened up, so they were looking to sort of do something new and innovative. So through that introduction and through that meeting, basically, the two companies have worked very closely to form a partnership. And at the end of this month, the end of September, they're going to have an opening of the studio space that they've developed, and it looks really exciting. So we had a sneak preview of the studio a month or so ago. There's a green screen there. You can do anything virtually. There's all this great sound equipment. And in the Hilton ballroom will be the largest curved LED screen in a hotel in Japan. So I think for events at their ballroom, it'll make a great backdrop for doing incredible events. So that's a recent one. And I think, on a daily basis, we're contacted by companies and we make introductions. So we have lots and lots of small successes on a regular basis. But of course, we have more sort of showcase successes as well, of course.
Yeah, that's great. And what a great example to share, and so wonderful to hear of a UK company involved in something as exciting as that. So that sounds really good. And I have to say, just picking up on the scale, it's sort of interesting for me to hear about the scale of things. When you spoke about potentially 45 to 50 in-person events per year, I realized that was pre-pandemic, but I'm sure you'll get back to that level as things move forward, and over 2,000 people per year. It just shows the size and the scale and the scope of what you're doing. And there's obviously value all the way through with all of those connections and people meeting each other and talking and collaborating together. So yeah, really, really good to hear about that. Now, moving on a little bit more to sort of the work of the Chamber, I've heard about this expression of the core pillars of the British Chamber of Commerce in Japan. Could you just tell us a little bit more about what that means and what that's all about, please?
Yes, of course. So we have three core pillars that we're focused on. So we have diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we have responsible business, and then digital innovation and technology. So the diversity, equity, and inclusion speaks for itself. So we're obviously looking at issues around that. Those are sometimes very thorny issues, but we're really looking to raise awareness about all issues around that. And I think on this topic, we want to actually we don't want to just talk the talk, we want to walk the walk. So internally, we've been looking at, our XCOM structure, our membership structure. Are we diverse enough? So of course, there's more work we can do there. We've also been looking at our events and how they're sort of the speakers at those. So diversity for us comes on many different levels. So we are, trying to make sure that we do that, and then importantly amongst our membership to make sure they're abreast of all the key issues in that area. Then for responsible business, that focuses a lot around problems around global warming and climate change. So obviously with COP26 last year being hosted by the UK, we had a lot of activity and events around that to raise awareness about what's going on and so forth. So the responsible business pillar is very active and again, it's a huge topic. So we have to be quite selective in what we do. And often we look at what's going on in Japan, and we often look to fill gaps where there's information that is missing, so we can actually make sure that people have the whole picture about various issues. And then finally, the digital innovation and technology piece. For that's looking very much at how digital is changing our lives, both professionally and personally, of course. We, through the chamber, we're starting to use more digital tools to communicate amongst ourselves, amongst the XCOM, of course, and with our members. We use all of the social media channels as well to sort of keep our membership updated and informed. So that's the Digitech side of things is very much about those digital tools, but also how digital is increasingly important in the workplace for keeping teams together, working remotely, and so forth.
Mm. Do you have, I know you have many years of experience of working in Japan, Richard, so you've seen sort of trends and themes coming through. Do you have any feeling yourself on what may happen in the future in Japan? Because I think it was traditionally always a kind of market where face-to-face activity was very much valued and relationship building, but obviously we've all had to get used to doing that differently in the last couple of years. Do you have any sort of feelings on how that trend might go ahead in Japan?
Sure. So I think when the pandemic broke, we all got used to using Zoom and Teams and so forth, and Japanese people do as well. So Japanese companies are now used to sort of having those sort of type meetings. I would say though Japan still is very much face-to-face culture. So of course it's very convenient, it's very easy to get on Teams or Zoom, have a meeting, exchange a little bit of information, but I think for serious business and to really progress things, Japan still does like to have in person. So I think digital can go some other way, but I think still in person, the final part does need that in person. So I think going forward, Japan is starting to embrace digital a bit more, but I think still face-to-face will still remain very important here in Japan. So I think again, Japan, like everywhere else, it will adopt the hybrids. But I look at the train in the morning, it's back to normal in terms of people on the train. So really? I think a lot of Japanese people are back in the office now.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Very interesting. Yeah, it will be fascinating just to see how that evolves, won't it? But it's good to get that update from you with all your years of experience there. That's for sure.
Yeah, and perhaps just to develop that a little bit further. So we did have a series we called The Future of Work, where we started to look at this, how companies are adapting to the new reality in terms of working from home and some of those challenges. And in fact, when the pandemic broke, we were the first chamber in Japan to actually have an online event. So we were sort of very quick to pivot there. So I think that series has been very, very useful for our members to inform them how, as things change, as more work from home happens, or as maybe more meetings happen online, how teams and businesses can sort of capitalize on that and to make the best use of that. And that series will continue in the coming months as well. So please watch this space for other events in that area.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds really good. Thank you. Great value coming from that. Okay. Well, that's explained a little bit more about the core pillars. The other bit of terminology that I've sort of heard come up is the vision project. Can I ask you to explain a little bit more about what that's all about, please?
Yes, so we call our vision project Brave Conversations, Positive Transformations. So it's a little bit of a mouthful. And I guess what it means in concrete terms is, there are thorny issues around a lot of, what we do with the core pillars. But if things aren't talked about, change doesn't happen. So really, this vision project is to get difficult conversations going. And then through those conversations, change will happen. Because if you don't talk about things, they won't change, of course. So and that's again, we've looked at that both internally and for our members as well. So again, that's part of our activities recently to look at the diversity of the chamber and how we're sort of structured, of course, to make sure that we're moving with the times and so forth. And I think in the coming months, again, you'll see events around this where we take difficult topics and we try and have a conversation around them to make sure that change does happen, of course.
That's fabulous. What a great initiative. And yeah, I agree with you completely. It's often we can all want to sort of avoid these difficult conversations, and they're not necessarily a pleasant thing that people enjoy doing, but as you're emphasizing, they are actually really, really important, aren't they? Yes. So yeah, sounds like another great initiative that you're working on. Very, very exciting. Okay, moving forward now, obviously our two organizations, Export to Japan and the British Chamber of Commerce, have had a long-term working relationship over many, many years, and we collaborate quite closely on many initiatives. From the Chamber's point of view, what other sort of key stakeholders or other close working relationships do you have with other organizations?
Yeah, sure. So, of course, the British Embassy here is a very important stakeholder of ours. So we work very closely with the ambassador and her team at DIT, Department for International Trade. And what does that mean in practical terms? It means that we have ex officio members, so Darren Goff and Mary Claire Joyce are on the ExCom board as ex officio members. We meet with them regularly, we exchange information, we get visibility on upcoming visitors and so forth. And through that, we hope to collaborate with them and find synergies for the benefit of the Japan-British relationship, predominantly, of course, on the trade side of things, but it can encompass other areas. So we might do joint events around trade missions, for example. Of course, the ambassador comes to some of our key events, so she will be invited to the British Business Awards as well, of course, and our AGM and other key sort of events during the year. And then when we have high-level visitors come out, so for example, recently we had the Lord Mayor of London, we organized an event around that as well. So we work very, very closely with the embassy and their staff to do that. Then, of course, there's the British Council. So as you know, the British Council focuses on education and culture, the softer side of power between the UK and Japan. So again, Matt Knowles is an ex officio member on the ExCom. And again, we're through that relationship, we're trying to understand what sort of events are upcoming. And with now people coming back to Japan, I think next month, the London Symphony Orchestra is coming to Japan, for example. So we get early updates on those areas, things. And I think, a couple of areas we're very keen to work with the British Council on are encouraging a younger membership to get engaged with the UK through the British Council or even the Chamber, of course. And then importantly, alumni. So mostly Japanese members that have gone to the UK, maybe and studied, have come back to Japan, who like the UK and who sort of, can be champions for us. And we're very keen to sort of develop that network of alumni throughout Japan, again, for the benefit of British business and the Japan-British relationship.
Fantastic. That sounds amazing. Really good.
And yes, and of course you mentioned, sorry to butt in there. So you mentioned export to Japan. So yes, I would be remiss not to mention export to Japan, of course. So as I think you mentioned, earlier on. So we get a lot of inquiries about trading with Japan. If it's something we can't, we're not sure about, or we can't handle, that's where we might pass that to export to Japan. So again, we work very, very closely to ensure that any companies that we're dealing with can get information about Japan. Importantly, about how to do business in Japan, whether that's around the market conditions, regulations, and those sorts of things as well. And then I guess that, of course, there are other partners we work with. We work with and we have relationships with a lot of Japanese organizations, such as government departments and so forth. And again, we've had Japanese high-level speakers come and talk at some of our events, people from METI, for example, the Ministry of Economy and Trade and Industry, and so forth. And we will continue to do that. So our Japanese stakeholders are also very important for us. And finally, we obviously have relations with other chambers in the region and in APAC as well. And we've collaborated on events with them in the past.
Sounds fabulous. I mean, what a wonderful network covering so many different areas, and yeah, very, very powerful. And it sort of brings me on to my next question, because through this discussion, we're sort of unpicking so many of the benefits that the chamber is providing for members. And there's various different points where we've spoken about those different benefits. But from your perspective, for UK companies that might be listening into this podcast that have not become members so far, or maybe we're not even particularly aware of the great work of the chamber, how would you summarize the sort of key benefits for those UK companies that might be now thinking about joining the chamber and becoming members?
Yeah, so of course, we have a huge network that I just sort of mentioned earlier. So one of the big benefits for British companies wanting to become a member is access to that network, of course. Then there's, of course, our event program that we do throughout the year. So again, they can be informed about the market and what it's like to be doing business here in Japan. And I think through that also, just talking to our members who are here in Japan, the actual practicalities of being in the market and doing business in Japan, even the simplest things, from exchanging business cards to setting up meetings, how you should behave in meetings, and so forth. So again, through our events and networking, that's where people, our members, can actually talk about those things. So those are some of the benefits that the British companies could have in becoming a member.
Yeah, amazing. And it's very clear, I think, from this discussion, that the high level and quality of the value points of becoming members. So if we drill down into a bit more detail on that, then are there different levels or different options available for companies to become members?
Yes, sure. There's two types of membership. So members that are based in Japan, and then members that are based overseas. And then within that, within those two categories, there's four categories of member. So we have Platinum, which is the highest level of member. And that's for companies that really want to engage very, very strongly with the British Chamber. So they, through Platinum membership, they have a very close relationship with the Chamber. So really, it's sort of a high-level engagement with those companies. And we have currently about, I think, 8 or 9 Platinum members, again, across a number of industries. Then we have our corporate members, and that's for basically companies of over 25 people. And for a corporate membership, there's generally a nominated member within member or two within that category. But all members of those companies can come and join our events and take part, of course. Then we have the entrepreneur category, which is for smaller companies of less than 25 people. And again, that's similar to corporate, but it's just obviously for smaller companies, and tends to be more sort of venture and startup companies involved in that category. And then we have individual member. So sometimes members, often British people working for large Japanese corporations, for example, the Japanese corporation's not a member, but they're keen to be involved with the chamber. So they join as an individual member, and then of course can get all the benefits of being with the chamber. And I think for all of our members, in addition to sort of access to all the events, as a member, they can get access to our media channels. So if they want to raise the awareness of their brand in Japan, they can use our media channels to sort of get to do that. And I think importantly, you know, for all of our members, we want to put them at the heart of what we do. So we act as perhaps a concierge, maybe you could call it. So members will come to us and say, look, I'm looking to do X or Y. And then we can say, okay, in that case, you need to speak to that person or that person, and we'll try and make an introduction. And if we don't know the person, that's where we can draw on our network of stakeholders and hopefully get to the right person they want to talk to, basically. So those are the categories. And I think increasingly we are seeing interest from British companies based there in becoming members, and of course we would welcome them. And with events online these days, we can record content. So if you're based in the UK and you can't come to something here in, you know, physically in Japan, you can still get access to a lot of our content that's on our website from past events and of course upcoming events as well.
Fabulous, and so great to hear of those 4 different levels, which means basically anyone can engage, right? From the highest corporate level right through to the individual members. So very all-encompassing for everybody. It's really good to hear. Well, I hope we've whet everybody's appetite, and I hope the people listening in to this have got a really good overview of the great work that the Chamber does. I guess the final question is, you know, what should they do next? If interested companies are fascinated to know more or engage with you or hear more about the membership or indeed sign up, what's the next step for them, Richard?
We're open for business, so please get in contact. So you can contact us at info@bccjapan.com. Or go to our website and please contact us. So our Executive Director, Sarah Backley, of course, is waiting for your call or email. And once a prospective member engages with us, we like to provide, you know, we will meet with them. If they're in Japan, we can meet with them in person, of course. But if they're in the UK, we will meet with them online. And then it's really important for us to then get to know those prospective members and make sure they understand, you know, what the Chamber can do for them, and that it's right, because we want to seek members that actually want to be very proactive and engaged with the Chamber. So here in Japan, we have a lot of active members who are, you know, doing a lot of stuff. And we want more of those members, of course, whether they're based in the UK or Japan. So again, that's where we want to make sure when we engage with companies that it's a right fit, and that they'll get the most out of that membership.
That sounds absolutely amazing, Richard, and such great value. And I can certainly endorse, both from the Export to Japan point of view, with all the great work that we've been doing in partnership with the Chamber over many, many years. And also from my perspective as a member of the Chamber as well for many, many years, I've seen and benefited from the great value that the Chamber does. So I can certainly endorse your message very heavily there.
Thank you.
Well, that pretty much brings us to the conclusion of this discussion. And before I thank Richard, I just want to come back to you, good people listening in or watching this podcast. I hope that's been a very useful conversation. I think Richard's been very good at giving us a very thorough overview of all the amazing work that has been going on at the Chamber, and more importantly, what's coming up ahead, and all the good reasons why membership is such a good move, and I would say actually a vital move for any UK company that is really serious about doing business in the Japanese market. Just a reminder once again, if you've enjoyed this podcast and if you found the content beneficial, please hit that like button, and please remember to subscribe so you get the updates on future episodes. And finally, I just want to come back round to you, Richard. We're watching it get darker in the background. It's obviously getting into evening time for you over there in Japan, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come and talk to us. And it's certainly very, very exciting to hear about all the great work that you're doing at the Chamber. So thank you so much for your time, Richard. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And I look forward to, meeting new companies that are interested in becoming members of the British Chamber, of course.
Great. Thank you so much. And enjoy your evening. And everybody listening into this, thank you for your time listening in. Thank you and goodbye.